Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Stephanie and I'll be the webinar admin today. Before we get started, I'll quickly go over some housekeeping items. We'll be following up with everyone after the presentation with the recording of the webinar. At any time during the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A tab and we'll be answering these at the end during our Q&A session. If at any point we're not able to answer everyone's questions during that time, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually after. Now I'll pass it over to our wonderful presenters.
Hi everyone, I'm Marie, Head of CS at Media Valet. I've been in the customer success world for over 12 years now, and my passion is helping our customers derive value from their platforms. It's great to be here.
Hey guys, it's Rob Morris here, Head of Customer Enablement. I've been working in CS and project management for around 12 years, and for the last 7, I've been helping clients adopt and achieve their DAM goals.
Hi, my name is Naomi Pelkey, and I'm the digital media producer in our enrollment management marketing department at the University of Windsor, and I've worked in this space for the last 4 years.
Awesome, thank you both. All right, everyone, let's kick things off with a multiple choice poll. So we'll get that set up here. We want to know what hiccups did you experience in your most recent organizational disaster? We'll give you a couple minutes. We did not have a formal plan in place. Our plan did not account for any remote work. We didn't have the correct resources and technology. Approval processes were lengthy, which resulted in delays, or everything went according to plan, which is great. We'll give you just a few more moments here. And remember, it is multiple choice. Okay. Okay, so it seems like about 38% did not have a formal plan in place or did not have the correct resources or technology. So hopefully this agenda will be very helpful for you. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, let's get things going with a quick overview of what we'll cover today. First, we're going to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what's happened over the last few months and set the stage for why having a plan in place is so important going forward. Next, we'll cover where a DAM fits into the conversation, particularly around the ideas of business continuity, reducing risk, and ensuring you've prepared for any kind of disaster. And finally, Naomi will walk you through how a DAM helped the University of Windsor navigate the last few months. Okay. Now, the phrase unprecedented time is something we have become all too familiar with everywhere we turn. Whether you love or hate it, these words are used because they accurately describe the current global situation. From a business perspective, the reality is that overnight, teams that were used to working side by side in the office were asked to go home and work 100% remotely. According to a CNBC All-America survey back in April, 42% of US workers who did not telecommute previously are doing so now. And while some organizations were able to adapt to these shifts smoothly, and most likely because they were already digital by default, others have felt a heavy toll on their in-house resources, workflows, communications, and projects. Adapting from in-person meetings to one primarily over email and video or via their VPN was a sea change in the way they worked. Companies really felt the scramble to put together a remote communication strategy for their own internal teams, partners or vendors, let alone their customers. These breakdowns can impact the trajectory of a business as some teams are still struggling to get complete remote alignment. So on the next slide, what we need to consider here is that while COVID-19 and the mandate to stay home was what pushed us into our current situation, it could have easily been anything else unforeseen. The pandemic gave us the opportunity to highlight some of the operational gaps that teams have been working around for years. Workarounds or clunky solutions that have become so conventional over time that they break at the first hint of stress or disaster. Obviously, it's preferable to establish clear remote work policies well before they're needed, but as the situation has shown us, this isn't always easy or flexible. All right, okay, I promise this picture will make sense in a minute. Now that we've set the stage of what can happen when businesses are unprepared, let's ask, well, what can we do? This is where the astronaut comes in. For very good reasons, astronauts have one of the most vigorous preparedness and disaster planning strategies across any industry. They map out each and every possible scenario and anticipate how they can prevent unideal situations like micrometeorites or fire that burns up oxygen on board, or how to administer CPR without gravity, really unique challenges to their mission. So while for them being prepared often comes down to life or death, the same principles of planning should be applied to your business, which brings us to the real question of today. Where does the dam fit in? A dam can be extremely helpful in both preventing disasters and helping prepare and respond to them. Generally, as I mentioned before, this fits into 3 key areas: risk reduction, disaster preparedness, and business continuity. So now I'm going to pass it off to Rob, who will dive into these in more detail and share use cases where a dam's core features have helped your customers.
Thanks, Marie. From a marketing standpoint, when we look at risk reduction, a lot of it comes down to 2 kinds of risk: reputation and legal. Marketing organizations need plans and procedures in place to mitigate these risks. From the reputation standpoint, we're referring to brand consistency. Specifically, is every form of corporate communication across all departments on brand, on tone, and portraying a consistent message? For small businesses alone, this can be a challenging undertaking, but as organizations increase to hundreds of employees, sometimes across multiple locations, this can feel nearly impossible. At best, this can lead to small, forgivable inconsistencies, but in worse scenarios, it can spread false information, which can have major consequences. Regardless, an inconsistent brand can chip away at customer trust. The legal standpoint can often be a larger source for concern. This is where improper use of a digital asset can result in a lawsuit. The most common issues we see here are the use of an image that either breaks copyright laws or has not been approved by the subject, such as a photo of a person taken at an event. Another side of this can be improper sharing of documents that contain information under NDA. Regardless of the form of improper use, it can leave your organization at risk. So this is a challenge that we've heard from many of the organizations that we've talked to over the last few months. As they closed down their offices and began working from home, finding the content they needed was no longer as simple as just connecting to a server or stopping by someone's desk. Suddenly, these teams needed to get out sales quotes, press releases, advertisements, and more on the same scale and timeline, but now they had considerably less access to the resources they needed. Even when they could access them via VPN or a file sharing solution like Dropbox, there was also a huge lack of understanding around what was actually approved for use. This also exposed organizations to a huge amount of risk, as all of the company's assets were available to their hundreds of employees. One specific organization I was talking to was having a major challenge providing access to the correct assets for their teams. They tried using a cloud-based file storage solution, but they quickly discovered that this free-for-all approach was fraught with risks, and it was left up to users to try and figure out which pricing details were the latest, which templates they should be using, and which product information was appropriate for their country and their region. This would be a problem at the best of times, but then you throw in COVID into the mix, and suddenly everyone was remote, and it turned into a dysfunctional chaos. By moving their assets into a well-organized dam, they were able to securely partition their assets. This meant that staff working out of their Paris location only saw the assets that were relevant to their region, and they only had access to finished, approved, and final documents. And they could also be certain that the documents they were using were the latest and greatest. Likewise, the US team saw a different, separate set of approved and localized assets for their region, so no more confusion. Furthermore, only certain users were able to move things and delete things, so no more files going missing scenarios that I'm sure we've all experienced. For organizations facing these challenges, the key element was that they needed each department to have a unique view to ensure that they had free access to the assets they needed without adding any additional risk. Your DAM will require two main features to be able to achieve this. Firstly, you'll need the ability to create custom user groups. This allows you to manage and control what your users can see and do. And you'll need to create quite a lot of these, trust me. The second feature you'll need is the ability to watermark assets for specific users or folders. This will help protect your images further. Folder restrictions and watermarks ensure each group can only access the assets approved specifically for them. These are critical features for organizations that create and share assets with multiple departments. Naomi, I think you had some similar challenges with your library.
Absolutely. So the wonderful thing that we really like about Media Valet is the ability to be able to curtail it to different user groups. So we can customize it. So our, like Drupal, for instance, web users, would only have access to a certain amount of assets, versus our designers who have access to copyrighted in materials. We're also able to expire content when our marketing campaign goes from this year to next year, which has really helped us in making sure that the campus-wide isn't using old content. So, like logos, for instance, that were like 3 or 4 years old that are circulating on individuals' desktops, or their cloud-based servers that are, all mixed up. This is like a one-stop shop for everything Windsor has to offer.
That's very cool. Nice. All right, let's get on to disaster preparedness. So when organizations are unprepared for a disaster, they often enter into survival mode, and they're concerned with two main things. Firstly, was any critical information lost? Customer data, irreplaceable images, upcoming marketing campaigns, or product collateral, these can all be at risk when things go sideways. And keep in mind that when we say disaster, it doesn't always mean a natural disaster. In fact, one of the biggest disasters facing organizations today doesn't come from nature at all. Computer hacking and ransomware are some of the biggest threats today. All it can take is a small security error from a single employee to put your entire organization at risk.
Rob, if I can jump in, I have a quick example.
Sure.
Someone on our marketing team had this happen while she was working at a marketing agency. So someone hacked into their server and deleted all of their content. And the worst part was their most recent campaigns weren't backed up yet. So their small team had to recreate campaign assets for about 6 different customers, which of course brought them back to square one. So as you can imagine, she said it was an absolute nightmare.
Oh, that's painful. Okay, thanks, Marie. The other concern is the organization's ability to pivot in the light of a disaster like this. So, do any projects need to be handed off? Are we able to allocate resources effectively? How will disaster recovery plans be communicated to the staff? Successful organizations need to be able to answer these questions and execute quickly. So the latter became the reality for hundreds of marketing teams when COVID struck. As retail locations came to a screeching halt, trade shows were cancelled and entire offices were shutting down. Campaigns that were meticulously planned out for the month, the quarter, or even the year suddenly imploded. In the midst of many new processes, these teams also quickly needed to pivot to initiate and execute an entirely new suite of campaigns that are relevant to the times.
We actually have a powerful story that one of our retail franchise customers shared on a recent webinar. So when COVID hit, there was a lot of uncertainty on whether their stores would close and for how long. The marketing team needed to quickly pivot to prep their franchisees for store closures or increased regulations. No one really knew at the time. So their first win was that in a single day, they were able to create and distribute 60 new COVID-related assets out to their franchisees. But however, as COVID continued to spread, they ended up being one of many retailers who had to close their locations worldwide. So resulting in reduced revenue, reduced work hours. The marketing team's hours were reduced 90%, from 530 hours a week to about 53 hours. So on top of this, The team needed to completely redo their Q2 strategy, still plan for Q3, and develop reopening packages for their franchises, challenges that many of our listeners may also have had. So this translated to roughly 4,000 new assets that needed to be sent to 180 stores. So the biggest win for their team was that they were able to use our branded portals feature to distribute these assets quickly and securely, and they were able to meet their Q3 deadline and complete their reopening packages 9 days ahead of schedule. It's a great story.
Nice, love that story. Yeah, one of the critical components of a DAM, and something that's really helped so many of our customers, is that ability to share and distribute assets quickly and easily. So that was evident in the branded portals feature that Marie just outlined in her customer story. This feature has been incredibly helpful for many of our customers to distribute important COVID-19 information, share remote working policies, and disseminate materials to employees and parties and third parties anywhere. With our branded portals, users have been able to create little custom mini sites, each with their own unique set of branding and features. And once created, the owners can then add content from the DAM and create a customized link that can then be shared externally. At the end of the day, the real challenge that organizations are trying to solve is how to ensure business continuity and enable teams to maintain project velocity regardless of the circumstances. Anything from an employee going on vacation to the closing of an office can cause the unexpected handoff of a project. At any time, teams need to be able to pick up those projects, access all of its source files, and collaborate on campaigns. This can cause a dilemma for many organizations. On one hand, they need to maintain control of 100% of their assets to ensure that the projects can be managed effectively. But on the other hand, if they're using a localized solution like an on-premise DAM or a server, well, that can create challenges if anybody needs to work remotely. Even when they have a VPN in place, they've been proven to be ineffective for marketing and creative teams. Marketing teams need to have the right technology and processes to be successful when they're working from home. This is one of the biggest challenges that we heard from organizations, specifically when the COVID-19 crisis hit. IT departments immediately turned to their VPNs to enable teams to remote in to their work computers and access their files. While VPNs can be valuable for a small number of users to access their computers occasionally, as soon as entire organizations were trying to gain access at the same time, major bandwidth and connectivity issues cause users to consistently lose access. Marketing and creative teams in particular were rendered inefficient with the use of a VPN. By nature, these two teams work with large media assets, photos, videos, design files. Not only did this take up a significant amount of bandwidth, it also led to incredibly slow-moving projects as the download speeds dwindled. Now, to illustrate this point, one of our clients with a really large creative team encountered just this scenario. In late March, the call was made that starting Monday morning, the entire team would be working remotely, and their IT team scrambled to ensure that everyone had VPN access and they knew how to use it. So come 9 a.m. Monday morning, everyone connected, and suddenly the team immediately realized that they had a very big problem. Photoshop files, Illustrator files, AI files, even photos that they'd normally go and grab from their server in seconds were now taking 10 to 15 minutes to download remotely. Multiply that by hundreds of files per day, over hundreds of users, and they quickly realized that they were in an untenable position. They simply could not work or stay in business if this was their new reality. Fortunately for them, though, they had a plan B. They were able to quickly migrate their working files into the cloud. In reality, this required them to essentially grab and dump around 5 terabytes of work in progress files into their cloud DAM. Once the files were in the DAM, the team could instantly search and preview those files and download them in a few seconds rather than a few minutes. Within a few days, the VPN was rendered redundant, and by the following Monday, the creative team were starting to settle into their new normal by going directly to the cloud for all their work in progress files. By continuing to use the DAM for work in progress files, the creative team are now beginning to return to the office, but some of their staff are choosing to remain to work at home. Cloud DAM is allowing them the flexibility to work how they choose without being penalized for being remote. Naomi, did you come across any similar challenges or lags when you're working with creative files and Adobe files, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So when COVID struck, we were not prepared, and I wasn't prepared for it. We had just purchased Media Valet, I think a couple weeks prior, and I was just starting to upload digital assets to the platform. And then COVID struck and everything was at home. And then I had to remote into my computer, which was a process, you know, trying to download Adobe files and so forth. So once I got everything uploaded to Media Valet and we were able to use our Adobe Connect connector, it was seamless after that point. But beforehand, you know, everything took a good like half an hour, 45 minutes for uploading, downloading, and sharing of files as well, because we couldn't share just through our email.
Wow.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Naomi. So really, for marketing and creative teams, as we've heard, speed is the key to do all things that they need to do. Transition projects, download or re-download, or submit finals for approval. Unlike other solutions, a DAM is built with media in mind, which is often reflected in these upload and download speeds. The ability to render and resize assets on the fly also saves these teams a ton of time. Another major advantage of a DAM is the ability to preview the most common creative asset types, like Adobe Creative Files, high-quality images like TIFFs, and multi-page PDFs and sketch files. In the last few months, we've heard from organizations accessing their servers remotely that the lack of previewing capabilities was a major pain point. Without a preview for multiple assets with similar file names, the only way to know it's the right file is if you download it. This could mean waiting seconds or minutes for a file to download only to find out that it's not the one you need, which is quite frustrating for already very busy teams. All right, so now after covering how the DAM plays an important role in being prepared and reducing risk, you'll want to hear about a real-life example. So thankfully, we have Naomi here, who will share how the DAM played an instrumental role for her team at the University of Windsor.
Hi, again, it's Naomi. So when we started our DAM search, we knew we needed something more than just a photo depository. We were looking for something sophisticated that worked alongside several other softwares that we use, which includes, sorry, Adobe, as well as like Hootsuite and Microsoft 365, which thankfully Media Valet does a great integration. So when creating a PowerPoint, we can get assets off of the DAM. We knew we needed something that was more sophisticated, and Media Valet has helped us in a number of those areas. It has made work rather seamless when working remotely and in this COVID-19 space. We did experience challenges though. Needless to say, as I said earlier, we were not necessarily as prepared for COVID with uploading all of our digital assets to Media Valet, to the software. So that became challenging. It took several weeks for our IT office to work on my computer at work to be able to retrieve the assets off of it and upload them to the software. Once that was uploaded, it's been a game changer. We've been able to share assets through our marketing team as well as with our public relations and designers. And then our next steps for the DAM is to roll it out to a broader community. So eventually, this tool is going to be used by everyone on campus. Right now, it's just used solely by 2 smaller departments because we want to ensure like we're not the assets aren't being used by or being used in a different type of way than they're supposed to be. So we're creating documentation and guidelines for our campus-wide community to make sure that the assets are used as they're supposed to be, as approved and so forth. So that's our case right now, and that's where we sit. So our next steps will be rolling it out to a larger community, which we're really excited to do and probably going to be doing in the next few months as we're still in this digital world. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Naomi. It was awesome to hear about your story and what your experience has been like with Media Valet and how it's supporting your organization. So before we hop into Q&A, we wanted to quickly highlight an initiative we're running. With everything happening right now across the globe, we wanted to help others make a positive impact in their communities. So we'll be hosting a draw for a chance to win a $200 Amazon gift card, as well as a $200 charitable donation to a registered charity of your choice. We'll be sending an email out following the webinar, so just keep an eye out for that, as it will have more details on how you can enter. Okay, and now we'll pop into the Q&A. So we have a question here. Are there any limitations for the number of custom groups that can be created?
Hi, no, I can answer that one. There are no limitations for custom groups. You can create an unlimited amount and manage yourself, or you can have our customer success onboarding team help create and update as you go along.
Awesome, thanks, Marie. Okay, we have another question here. So do you have any integrations with any other marketing tech solutions? We need help keeping employees organized while working remotely.
Hey, I'll grab that one. Yeah, absolutely. So we integrate with two of the leading workflow management tools, Workfront and Rike, which I'm sure our audience have probably heard of. We also integrate with Slack, which is a super popular messaging platform that a lot of teams are using currently to connect when they are remote. So between those three, it allows people to manage their workflow and manage their communication.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Another question here. My team is working remotely for an indefinite period of time, but we still have assets that are stored in multiple locations and servers. Is there an easy way for me to get these uploaded to Media Valet?
For sure, that's a super common scenario with most of our clients. We have an uploading app that you can install on any computer, any server, that allows you to simply just drag and drop those files from the various different locations, just drag and drop them onto the app, and that pushes them up into your cloud library. And just to call it, we also recently launched a 48-hour onboarding package in response to the COVID piece, where we just help teams get up and running very quickly on the platform if they need to move fast.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. We have another question here. So Rob, you mentioned that 5 terabytes of work in progress documents were dumped into the DAM and were instantly searchable. We're just wondering how we can search for assets if they don't necessarily have complete metadata.
So there's a number of different ways that you can search for assets in the DAM. Obviously, we have lots of different data points around which category they belong to, if there is some keywords that were added, etc. But layered on top of that, we also have artificial intelligence. So every asset that gets added into the DAM, there will be an AI piece looking at the asset, identifying common objects, common colors or predominant colors, and text as well. So if there's any writing on the image, if it has a tagline, that sort of thing, all that information gets picked up automatically as soon as the asset is placed in the DAM and then recorded as metadata. So that means that I can come along and I can search for images of palm trees or beaches or dogs or people, that sort of thing, and the AI is going to pick up that information and it's going to serve up assets that contain those objects. And same for text, I could search for a particular tagline that appears in an advertising slogan, for example, and it would pull those assets up as well. So literally without any human adding any extra information, the DAM is going to identify that and make it searchable and available.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. So we have another question here. My organization has strict security requirements because our clients are in the financial and healthcare industries. So we have been unable to find a way to use the cloud while feeling like our assets meet the strict security requirements. How can we use the cloud safely?
So I guess I can answer that one as well. So it'll depend particularly on the organization or industry that the particular user is working within. Media Valley sits on the Microsoft Azure cloud. So we work with a lot of different healthcare industries. So we have HIPAA compliance, we work with financial sector, so we have our SOC 2 compliance. So there's lots of different compliance metrics for different organizations. Definitely something you want to investigate and check out is just which bodies would be managing your particular sector, and then ensure that your DAM provider covers those. But certainly from the Media Valley side, both the financial and health sector is covered.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Another question about AI. How much training does your AI need for photos that are atypical?
So it depends. I mean, AI is something that learns over time. So I would say it really comes down to the amount of confidence that you want to instill. We would generally say a minimum training is about 1,000 images. We recommend for like a proper confidence level of like 90% plus, you would want to train over 5,000 or more images to get a real accurate capture of that particular object. But as I say, over time, the AI is going to iterate and improve as well. So even once you get that initial threshold of say 1,000 images, it will continue to improve as you start to add more and more images to your library.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. So we have a question for Naomi. We would love more details on your experience with cloud onboarding. How much data did you need to move, and how was that accomplished? Over the internet, via shuttle, something else?
Well, we probably uploaded more than like a terabyte or just around a terabyte of content up to the dam, and it was all done through the internet. So I had to log in to my work computer, and because the server that I have at work is not a cloud-based server, it's a physical server, so I'd have to log on to my computer at work and then log on to Media Valet, upload the content. It was a slower process just because it isn't a cloud-based, and then wait for it, and then go in on my other computer, make sure all of the content was tagged properly or in the right category, and so forth. And it honestly, I think it took about a week in order to get all the content, but that wasn't doing it every day, all day long. That was like, I'd say 2 or 3 hours per day.
Awesome, thanks, Naomi. Okay, another question here. Is it possible to track which assets are copyrighted in the DAM?
Yeah, I can probably grab that one. So that's actually a pretty huge question. There's a number of different ways that you can address this. So just at a really super high level, tracking copyright can be done through simply through attributes and fields. So we can have certain bits of information captured for every asset. We can use things like asset status or status flags. So for example, assets that show up as green in Media Valley are free from copyright restrictions. Ones that show up red or maybe have a lot of restrictions on them, some people can't use them. That can then flow into permissions so that only certain users see assets with certain copyrights and other users don't see them, or other users can view assets with certain copyrights and others can download them. So there's a whole different way that you can combine that. Copywriting and managing copyright is very different to different organizations in the way they manage and understand their workflow. So it's important you have a DAM that's flexible enough to be able to adjust and adapt to your organization's interpretation of how copyright rules should be adhered. And then also on the back end, you want a way of tracking what people are doing with those assets. So if I am allowed to use an asset that's been copyrighted, am I using it properly? So am I putting it in the right websites? Am I making sure that it's being used for the period of time that it's supposed to be used and it's coming off again? So being able to keep track of what people say they're going to use an asset for and holding them accountable to that is another side to copywriting as well, which a DAM can assist with. So it's a huge piece to any DAM component, and I think ensuring that you have flexible and robust copyright system within the DAM that you choose is super important.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Another question here. So, can we use a DAM in conjunction with a VPN? We have other teams that are required to use one.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still very much a place for VPNs. I hope that it was made clear. But you can use your DAM library entirely in conjunction with your VPN. A VPN is still required for certain services within your organization. That's just fine. And then people can access the DAM separately, either over the VPN or just directly through the cloud.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, with technology changing so often and quickly, how often should the customer expect Media Valet to have system updates?
That's a really good question. So Media Valet is constantly evolving, constantly adding new features and updates, like any SaaS platform should be. So we will generally have an update schedule. I would say approximately runs every month or so where updates come through. The nice thing about working in the cloud though and working with a SaaS platform is that there's zero disruption. So for your older systems, for things like the on-premise things where you're installing stuff on servers, when an update comes through, it's usually a big deal. You have to kick people off, people have to stop working for a little bit of time, the update goes through and so on and so forth. So it can be quite disruptive to an organization. Updates to cloud programs like SaaS applications like Media Valet, they don't require anybody to have any downtime whatsoever. So the actual update takes place, it's transparent to everybody that it's occurring. And the next time the person logs in, they'll just see some new feature or some small improvement to the platform. Now, obviously, we've got our customer success team, so they'll communicate to all of our customers about the updates that are coming out, what new features are being launched, and when things are happening. But from the customer end, they just see all this great stuff appearing. They don't have to shut things down, and there's no downtime.
Thanks, Rob. So we have another question here. What do you recommend for archiving high-value assets, ensuring that there are no loss of assets or metadata?
Super common thing that comes up with our clients. Again, you want to have flexible DAM that provides you with the ability to configure the rules that you need. So some of our clients will archive after 1 year, some will archive after 3 years, 5 years. It really just depends what their use case is and what their business requirements are. To ensure that all of the metadata is maintained, what we would normally see people doing is they would create a separate category, we call it. Folder would be maybe the term to use, that's either restricted or has limited access, so certain other users can't see it or be able to do things with it. And then when assets get to a certain age or a certain point, they'll move those assets over into that archived area. All the original metadata can still carry with the asset, but it's now placed in a location which perhaps means that when people are searching, it's not going to come up. Because when I search for the latest marketing images, I don't want to see things from 2016, 2017 coming up. So they'll generally take them out of the general public view. But if someone needs it, the higher level users can still go in and access those archived assets. There are other ways to do it. Again, as I mentioned earlier, flexibility is important. So you can leave the assets in their current location with Media Valet, but you can change their status so that they're hidden from view, but still in that particular location. That's another way of doing it. It just depends whatever works. I think the important thing to do is understand what the strategy works for your organization, define the rules that you need, and then find a DAM provider that can meet those requirements.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. So we have one last question here. Do branded portals come as part of the standard DAM package, and can they be shared privately?
Oh, I can take this one. Great question. So branded portals do come as a part of the standard DAM at Media Valet. And as of right now, there's no technical limit to the number of portals you can have, which is great when you need to curate them for different kinds of groups, as we've heard. They can also be password protected, so can absolutely be shared privately.
Thanks, Marie. All right, and that concludes all our questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the webinar.